Sojourn and Emre are the best DPS in the game. That's clearly not a debate. No one thinks that there's any DPS better than them too, because Emre got buffed recently, and Sojourn has always been the queen of DPS since the start of Overwatch 2. And lately, a lot of players have been calling Emre broken, and people call him better than Sojourn, which has, like I said before, has been the best hit scan / best DPS since her release, since Overwatch 2 has come out. And today we're going to break down the differences and answer the question if Emre is actually better than Sojourn, or is the queen still on top. First of all, we need to ask, why is Emre even in this conversation? Emre, when he was first released, was not very good. He was outdamaged, outranged, outbursted by the entirety of the hit scan roster. His damage did so little, people were calling him the tickle monster. He didn't have the range to actually follow up on any of that damage. The only thing that was good in his kit, I think, was probably his grenades. However, Blizzard provided Emre with a lot of buffs that through the season that power crept him to be over all the hit scans besides Sojourn. And that's why we're asking which one's actually better, Sojourn or Emre, because they're both pretty strong in their own rights, and they are both pretty similar in terms of how much value they get. But right now, after Emre's buffs, he brings out a straw wrong damage output because he has very consistent damage. He has a high fire rate, high magazine size, and he reloads pretty fast. He hit with his roll perk. His grenades do pretty consistent 120 damage for nade shot combos, and his ultimate's pretty good, and he has really good survivability, along with really good late game scaling with his perks. And with strength like these, Emre is pretty good in the meta and a real threat to overtake Sojourn. But on the other hand, how could Emre just ever beat Sojourn? Because, like, if you look at Sojourn's positives, she's been the best hit scan throughout the entirety of Overwatch 2, and for good reason. She has the most carry potential out of any character in the game. Her railgun burst is something that you have to respect. You cannot peek it if you've seen the big glowing orb in your face. It's just like Widowmaker, except she's like a mobile Widowmaker. You have to respect the one shot. She has good AoE denial with her orb. Her mobility is one of the best in the game, especially if you get the double slide perk. You can just be in and out all the time. Her ultimate is one of the best in the game. You don't need a combo with anything to get value out of. Getting one kill with it is a lot of value, and you can still combo with it. Like, you don't need to combo with it to get value, but comboing it still gets a lot of value. And she's also one of the best characters to pocket in the game in terms of healing pocket with Mercy, speeding them around with Lucio, etc., etc. But let's kind of like look at the weaknesses between the two characters. So we'll start off with Sojourn's weaknesses. She's kind of less consistent. Everything is burst, and there's a lot of downtime and very aim dependent. I'm not saying Emre isn't aim dependent, but because Sojourn's one shot with the railgun is the most important part of her value in her kit, that you need to have a lot better aim. And she does have less range because her fall off on the railgun is pretty severe, and also since she's projectile, it's a lot harder to land her primary fire at longer ranges. Overall, playing Sojourn carries a lot of positives. She has one of the best ultimates in the game, and she has the most mobile and burst value ratio that any character has, which is why she's always been good forever. She has a kit that you have to respect, or else you just lose the game. However, in some of the aspects that Sojourn does not do so well in, Emre really thrives in, which is pretty consistent on damage, like I said before, and you can 2-burst squishies after his buff. And his rifle is easy to use. It's basic FPS skills to use. It's like playing Halo. There's a reason like why he's called John Halo or Master Chief, because it is literally just playing Halo. He has extremely good long range pressure because his range got buffed to be the same range as Ashe, but since his damage is more consistent than Ashe, it's consistent long range pressure. He has very huge burst potential with his nade combos. You can throw a grenade, shoot at someone. If you hit like really good burst with a nade, it just one-shots them. Hence nade shot combo, like people say back in Halo. And his survivability with his pistol when you can lifesteal allows him to stay in duels longer, allows him to survive dives, etc., etc., etc. So when you can survive the engagement rather than just hiding from the engagement, you can stay in fights a lot longer. And his ultimate's also pretty solid on its own, but you have to combine it to make it crazy, right? Like, you don't really need to combine anything with Sojourn's to make it really good, but unless you combine an ultimate with Emre's, he kind of just sits there and is able to get shot at unless he gets pocket while he's ulting. It's kind of like playing with the Pharaoh, but he does have really good late scaling with his perks. But he also has weaknesses just like Sojourn does, and his weaknesses are pretty, I wouldn't say pretty glaring, but his weaknesses are there if you notice, if you play him long enough. Which his pistol is really inconsistent for lifesteal. Like, you have to land directs to get the most out of your lifesteal, and if you're not landing directs, especially with his late game perk, you're not going to be surviving in the engagements as long as you think. And his ultimate usually requires setup and coordination. You can't just pop it and expect to kill all 5. You can do that with Sojourn if you are on a good enough angle, but you cannot do that with Emre. And even though he does have really good survivability when he gets dove, he has really low mobility, so he can survive for a little bit, but he cannot live forever. So unlike Sojourn, he cannot flip the map, and pistol can be a forced cooldown, and it's a pretty long cooldown also. So you gotta think about those things when you're playing Emre. But after all this, who's actually better? And honestly, I think it's still Sojourn. I think Sojourn is still the best hit scan in the game, the best DPS in the game. Don't get me wrong, Emre is really strong right now. You could easily place him in S tier or right below an S-. However, it simply comes down to Sojourn having significantly more carry potential, and she works so much better on so many more maps. A lot of the maps are designed with short, hard flanks, like on Colosseo and Flashpoint maps. All the new maps that they've been adding, most of them are King of the Hill, most of them are Flashpoint, most of them are Push, and all these new game modes and all these new maps. Sojourn excels on hard short angles to be able to get the most carry value potential. Whereas Emre mostly thrives on the maps that we haven't really seen a lot more of, such as like Junkertown and long range maps like Rialto. So the long range engagement maps, I think Emre is better in, but I think since there's more maps that are short range maps and short hard angles, Sojourn is significantly better with her carry potential and mobility. And you could, I'm not saying that Emre's bad in those situations. You can definitely stick Emre on his weaker maps and matchups, and he can still get an insane amount of value. But we're not talking about if Emre's still good on those maps. We're talking about if Sojourn's better than Emre. So thinking about all the positives, negatives, maps, and how they're played, Sojourn's definitely still better. And like for Emre to be at his best in terms of his weaknesses, like getting dove or getting engaged on, you have to wait for his in-game build to be able to be in a good spot to survive those engagements better. So like, yeah, you can play Emre, but you're intentionally nerfing yourself when you can just pick Sojourn in those instances instead. And even on her weaker matchups, like on longer range maps, Sojourn can still find equal or greater value than Emre, because you can still just make individual plays on those longer range engagements. You just have to figure out an angle that you can do on Sojourn that gives you less distance between the enemy, but you still have the slide, which is an incredible kite tool on any map. So Emre would be better in those situations, but Sojourn is still better at her weakest points than Emre at his lowest points, if that makes sense. And Sojourn can find way more individual play that can carry your team to make sure that you guys win the game. But what do you think? Do you guys think I'm wrong? Do you guys think Emre is better than Sojourn? Let me know down in the comments below. If you guys have any more comments or you guys have any more suggestions on any educational content that you want to see, please let me know. And thank you for watching, and have a good night.